I see it as starting to make decisions. And I don't think a lot of technology waves prior to this made a lot of decisions. They organized things, collated things, and helped us find things. But this feels different because it changes who and what is considered valuable.
If AI can handle prospecting, which certainly can, it can also do research very well, I would say. It can do note-taking, it does summarizing, it does pipeline analysis. So it can now do qualification calls. There's tools out there doing that. What's left for a human sales rep in 3 to 5 years?
Improvisation and the implication that is still in the domain of how you interact with humans. If your go-to-market architecture is wobbly or incomplete, you will get overrun by production. The systems will now be able to produce more than enough of every activity. We had our pipeline and we had our shadow pipe. And the pipeline was what everybody saw. And so we saw the exact same behavior. And what that taught me was you're not getting the truth. So you can't correct for it. Publicly shaming someone is kind of a ridiculous way to get something done, honestly. I think what that gets you is compliance. It doesn't get you trust, and it doesn't get you max effort.
Hey everyone, this is Said with Messy Growth. So today's guest is someone I deeply respect, not just for what he's built, but how he thinks. I got Justin Fite with me. He's an operator with over 30 years of experience in software, sales, and leadership. He's helped build and scale 6 software companies with 5 successful exits. Not an easy feat, by the way. He's been a CRO, a chief sales officer, a VP at Salesforce, and a board advisor. And he's pretty much seen companies go through hypergrowth, plateaus, acquisitions, and everything in between. But here's what makes Justin's different, and it's not just his resume. It's his ability to distill complex situations, complex ideas into pretty much clarity, something that I've experienced firsthand. He's harvested lessons from over tens of thousands of sales calls. He's built repeatable revenue engines. He's guided founders through the chaos of scale. And he has a rare talent for cutting through the noise and getting to the first principles fast. He's someone whose career I look at and think, that's the long game done right. Someone whose career I'd want to emulate at some way, shape, or form. He's a builder, advisor, board member, mentor, a person who has operated at pretty much every layer of growth and still stays grounded in execution. So today we're going to talk about how repeatable revenue works in SaaS, what most growth stage companies get wrong, AI, how leaders lose focus, and how to simplify what feels very overwhelming at times. Justin, welcome to the show.
Ed, good to talk to you again. Man, you're making it hard to live up to that long list. Great catching up with you.
Absolutely. No, I don't think that I'm saying enough when it comes to you. Like one of the things that when people talk to me about sales, I feel like that I can explain things, but it takes a certain amount of time and energy, and I can't distill complex ideas as well as you can. And whenever I've come to you with problems, be that be scaling, team, processes, you have that innate ability to kind of like look through the noise and figure out how exactly is it something that I can do that would help me kind of like level up. And I don't think that is an easy feat. I don't know if it comes with experience or what is it, but you do a great job at that.
Well, thank you for saying that. It's I pretty much have made every single mistake you can make multiple times. So a lot of banging my head against the wall and getting my head banged against the wall from boards and leaders and things like that. So over time, I think all of us benefit from great mentors, great experiences, and just being thoughtful about what we're trying to do for, with the companies we're running.
Yeah. So this is an episode that I was very excited about because I wanted to talk to you. I know we talked earlier about AI, pretty much the change that is happening in the industry, something that we love, an industry that we work all of our lives in. And it's interesting because your experiences, since it's so expansive and extends for such a long period of time, you've built sales organizations to multiple different waves, SaaS, cloud, automation. Is AI actually different, or is this just another efficiency wave that people are way overreacting to?
Yeah, that's a really thoughtful question that most people are trying to figure out. I think the answer is both. First and foremost, it is about efficiency, right? It's another accelerant to the way we do work. But the thing that makes it so different is that it's working on the cognitive layer. So it is essentially, I see it as starting to make decisions right? It is starting to make decisions. And I don't think a lot of technology waves prior to this made a lot of decisions. They organized things, collated things,
Sure.
and helped us find things. But this feels different because it changes who and what is considered valuable,
Mm.
right? Which I think is really fascinating. I think it's freaking a lot of people out and easy to get overwhelmed with the hype, but
Yeah.
there are some fundamental things that are just going to make this, the impact of this, the reach of this change pretty significantly.
Mm. I think what you hit the nail on the head here. A lot of times the tools that we have used in the past, be a sales tool, an automation tool, what it would do is you would give it data and it would inject it and it would produce a certain level of result. But the critical thinking still remains in your head. Like you're going to have to figure out all of the processes. Whereas now how I see people use LLM is a little bit differently. They're punting the responsibility for critical thinking over to them. They're just feeding it data points once again. Only this time around, LLMs are dictating what the course of action a person ends up taking. Now it's again both scary, but at the same time, frankly, very humbling because the playing field is kind of leveled for a lot of folks. I was talking to somebody earlier in the week and they said that they were talking about outbound sales. And frankly, I kind of felt like that I'm lost in how they're doing outbound sales. And I have 14 years of experience as a salesperson and I just couldn't match what they're saying. And they have a year worth of experience to right out of college and being an SDR. And I kind of felt like the playbooks have changed. The game, for a lack of a better way to put it, has changed.
Yeah. I think where it's changed the lever point. I think in the way we accomplish a task. I'll give you a quick example. So I was trying to consolidate a bunch of financial data, like bank account stuff, and just we had a mess. I had a couple of things that were making things confusing. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to build a really simple spreadsheet that pulls in all this data. And so I was using AI to help me kind of orchestrate this. And it was really super helpful, as always is, like, okay, pull this data, organize it this way, make these headings. And it was just really doing it. I'm just building this spreadsheet and I'm no finance guy. And so after about a day, I've got this ungodly, unwieldy, 4 tabs reconnected to a bunch of data. And I had completely lost the point of what I was after.
Yeah.
And I think that's where that showed me, it's like there is a line where judgment and decision making is going to be so critical for these AI tools that we're using, which is they'll dig where you want them to dig, they'll send what you wanted to send, they'll write what you want them to write. But it's like, is that really what you want? And is that the right order? And is that the right time? So I think, your point about what's going to change is the line of tasks that are going to be automated keeps creeping up, right? Now it's creeping up to production, outreach, even engagement. Some of engagement is now getting subsumed inside the AI layer. And I think what's above that is, one, is this the right thing to do? And is it the right time to do it? And I think what this feels like, if your go-to-market architecture is wobbly or incomplete, you will get overrun by production. The systems will now be able to produce more than enough of every activity. And I think that might really create messes because it will create a lot of noise in the system. And I feel like there's a lot of noise already without additional layers of that. But I think it's really hard to tell, am I stable? Is my go-to-market approach stable? Is it targeted? Does it need to change as we evolve? Those types of things will be. I think a lot of companies will go from general purpose, help everybody be efficient, which is kind of a knee-jerk reaction, which is, hell, they can automate it. When it should be thought of as kind of a, let's not let productivity overtake our points of decision making,
Mm.
because that's kind of what happens with outbound already, which is
Yeah.
tons of outbound, tons of engagement, tons of activity. And then you got to kind of weed through that. Is like, okay, what's useful?
Yeah.
What's producing value? You know that from being a sales leader. It's a challenge to weed through all of that and determine, is this signal or is it noise?
Yeah. So I've heard opinions on AI. I've seen AI kind of evolve in a very short period of time in a range of different activities, not just within sales, customer success, support. And SaaS has pretty much decimated a lot of different roles. So rightfully so, people are scared. If
Yeah.
AI can handle prospecting, which certainly can, it can also do research very well, I would say. It can do note taking. A lot of the folks are actually using that. It does summarizing, it does pipeline analysis. Hell, it does pipeline analysis a lot better than sometimes things that I miss out. And like you said, I've experienced looking at it day in, day out. So it can now do qualification calls. There's tools out there doing that. What's left for a human sales rep in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah. I think it's funny that people talk about leveling the playing field. Like,
Hmm.
I'm a crappy developer, and now I can be a lot better developer and catch up to
Sure.
you, say, for instance. Um, I think, I think the, I think what's going to be exposed is the reps that, in a good way, the reps that ex- express judgment
Mm.
and decision making. It's like the difference between what happened and what the implication of what happened is.
Yeah.
Like when this happened on a sales call, what is the implication of that? And there's, the big aspects of a call that might occur, but there's also the little aspects of a call.
Mm.
And I always feel like improvisation is one of the best skills that a sales rep has, which is, we're on a call with a
Yeah.
prospect. You're the prospect and you say something.
Mm.
If I don't pay attention to that and change direction, like, wait a second, are we pushing on the wrong issue? You just said something that made me think the value proposition might lay elsewhere.
Mm. Yeah.
And I feel like it's the improvisation and the implication that is still in the domain of how you interact with humans and how you interact with people, and get a sense for something and I do feel like it will allow you as
Yeah.
a great salesperson to spend a lot more of your time in that realm of the call. What does this mean? I'm really, note taking is a good example, which is,
Mm.
no one needs to take notes anymore, right?
Yeah.
Just for the transcript ability, but you need to pay attention to what someone's saying in order
Yeah.
to say, whoa, let's pause for a second. Let me jump to a different part in this presentation. Let me stop and ask a couple of clarifying questions. That skill set, which really is not very prevalent, right? That's the top 20% of the reps.
Yeah.
That skill set will be the skill set for salespeople.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% sought after. So let's strip AI down a little bit more. I'm a sales leader. I constantly look at the fact that how exactly is it that I can add value against a certain system, say AI pound for pound. And one of the things is that folks would come to me and ask for feedback on calls. I would review calls, review demos, review emails, and try to give feedback as much as I possibly could for reps to level up. And over your career, you've also listened to thousands of calls, demos, you've reviewed a lot of emails. If AI analyzed those same calls, emails, would it outperform your judgment? Where does human intuition still beat models in that particular sense? Because I'm having a very hard time and struggling, maybe because it's over reliance on AI, maybe because of the fact that you're looking at it from a fear factor. It is scary good in terms of how it can tell you where you're up, where you're performing wrong. Like a tool like Gong would actually tell you your tone of voice, like how
Yeah.
you're saying it and your pronunciation and your flow. It is scary good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the interesting thing that just kind of amazes me is that line just continues to move, and it moves faster. That's another difference from other
Sure.
eras, other technology eras, is this is just evolving. It's almost like on a weekly basis, somebody is just kind of incrementally
Yeah.
getting better integration, all the types of things. So I think where it would definitely be much better than me at assessing aspects of the calls over time, like the whole, analysis of a trend. What is happening over time? Is this occurring? Is this occurring on more than one call? Is this, where's the sentiment going? Those types of things. It would be much better. But I do think I think where we can still add value is the reaction,
Mm.
the response of the rep. And I do think until it's two machines talking to each other, we're still two humans talking to
Yeah.
each other. And I think where a sales rep can really be aided is in the kind of exploration and analysis of how did you respond to that? Why did you think that was the next best thing to do?
Yeah.
Because those things are occurring because they're not reading scripts, right? Hopefully they're not reading scripts. The reps aren't. So they're still reacting
Yeah.
and improvising based on what the prospect is doing.
Mm.
People come, leave the room. People enter the room. People say something. Things get taken out. Out of new context is brought in. So I think it's examining the judgment of the person to say, when this occurred, what was your natural reaction? And maybe it exposes things like, I didn't know our platform helped in that regard, right? Somebody brought up something and they just slide right over, the rep slides right over it because they're unaware of
Yeah.
capabilities,
Yeah.
or they missed cue and EQ kind of cue, meaning, somebody says something or expresses something that they just missed. And I think it's the leader can help with developing the judgment and the improvisation that
Mm.
reps need to have, because every call kind of unique. The circumstances, the situation, the dynamics, all that's unique. So I think developing the skills to say, what is this situation presenting to me right now?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And I think one example of that is, this is not a good prospect. Like, how many calls have you reviewed where it's like, this is not a good prospect for us, but everybody keeps going,
Yeah. 100%.
so
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
I think that if history is an indication, I do believe, and that we kind of lived through that wave of chatbots. People crave human interaction. They crave talking to people. I still believe in the phone, not maybe in the cold calling sense, but the fact that you can just dial somebody and just talk to them and it, like, just cut through the noise. It's going to be sought after more than ever before now with the introduction of AI elements and LLMs. So I'm curious to see how that one goes, which is kind of a good segue to the next question I had for you, which is, in SaaS, do you think there is a particular role that is at risk right now, but nobody wants to admit it because we kind of feel like, well, we're in the bubble, so we see it coming in, AI and changes come hurtling towards it a lot faster than if you
Yeah.
were on the outside of the bubble. So there's adoption.
Yep.
But B, I don't think anybody thinks to themselves and go, yeah, I could be next. It's not something that we as humans operate in. It's just not the way to go. So what do you think, or what kind of role do you think is at the risk most?
Yeah, I think it depends. So think about small companies.
Mm.
Roles are very soft lines. We have
Yes.
a 3-person company, and it's like everybody is, chief scientist and they're washing dishes type thing. So a lot of gray overlapping stuff in small companies, and that continues for, I'd say, quite some time.
Mm.
Even when roles are defined at a small company that's got a handful of employees, there's still a ton of overlap, right?
Yeah.
We don't have enough people. If you get to a larger company, if you get to companies that have striated their responsibilities very finely, then there's probably roles where summarization, organization, of material is a big part of that role. And I think it will affect all of our jobs. It should. Right? We should all be able to exploit it. But in the area where the jobs are highly defined and summary oriented,
Mm,
or following any kind of like, this is the process we
yeah.
do, and you're moving information, that feels like probably an easy place that early AI, this early phase of AI we're in, will begin to find purchase. We'll find put a foothold in
Mm,
these organizations because it's suitable and the tools seem to be capable of it.
yeah, yeah. One of the things that I was talking to another sales leader in the past week, they were talking about outbound sales, excuse me, and personalization at scale. They're like, I don't really need people to go ahead and personalize email. AI can do pretty much a lot of that, and it can go through, parse through your LinkedIn profile, take a look at the events, some of the posts
Yeah.
you've made, and it does a really excellent job at summarizing everything and then writing an email. So if AI can personalize outbound at scale, and outbound is something most of the companies are trying to perfect. And it's I've heard that for past 14 years. I think now more than ever because market is really saturated and AI, you're competing with a lot. There's just so many different tools out there. So if AI can do that, which is personalization for outbound at scale, does that destroy the value of personalization? Are we about to enter a world where authentic outreach with Loom videos, what have you, becomes a real scarcity?
Yeah, I think the trend will continue, which is there was a moment when it was the first time where I could automate sticking your first name into an email. Right. I mean that was not that long ago. I mean,
Yeah,
you're young, I'm old, but that was not that long ago. And that
yeah,
was like, holy crap, we could really, that was so
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Right. Tokenization and all that kind of dynamic
Mm,
insertion into email marketing and things like that. Damn, that was not that long ago. So I think personalization, it will just be one of those layers is like, of course it's
mm,
personalized. Of course I know where you went to school. Of course I know anything out of your LinkedIn. All of that will become kind of a base layer. It'll get subsumed into this base layer of that's how every transaction will go.
yeah.
No one is not going to have it. In other words,
Mm,
um, what's above that is uh, a insight is what
mm,
I always think of, which is, are you going to connect to what it is
mm,
that I'm most worried about? Are you going to be able to help, make inroads into that? You might be guessing a little bit because you don't know
yeah,
everything about my company, but can you begin to circle around the things that are most troubling to me or most
sure.
needed by me? Um, that's where outreach in general, but outbound in particular, will have to get to attract me, because everything is going to be personalized. Every note will say everything that the AI systems can get on the situation.
Yeah.
Um, I always felt like the best reps were the ones that narrowed their focus and deepened it. So
Mm,
they gave away. I mean, this is an example from my recent past, but the last time I was an operator, our best rep gave away about half the deals that were technically his, so he
mm,
could focus on fewer deals. And he went very, very deep into understanding the nature of that problem.
mm,
So it was more focused. It wasn't
yeah.
it wasn't big and wide. It's very narrow, extremely deep. So he tried to resonate with the people he was reaching out to.
Yeah. 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 Well, that's amazing being able to give all of that away because you're so laser focused. But also, I think it's maturation, right? You understand that it's not just about the number of deals; it's knowing what do you tackle, where you put your energy and focus in. For the most part, wow, kudos. Um, I believe salespeople, or in general, any role that revolves around a certain target and numbers, you have to be somewhat ambitious. So I've seen a lot of salespeople that are extremely ambitious. I've seen some float through it that are not so ambitious. But in general, I would say you can park them into a bucket of ambition. Is there a particular mistake that ambitious operators make when they start getting some level of momentum?
Um, yeah, I'd say the thing that I've seen that it happened to me everyone's susceptible to it, and it certainly happened to me, is divergence, is like when you begin to experience growth, you are very susceptible to including, not being suspicious of the,
Mm.
and what happens is companies start growing, you start getting traction, and then somebody wins a deal in manufacturing. And what I've seen happen is, a rep wins a deal in, say, manufacturing, and you're not in that space, you're not in that
Yeah.
vertical. All of a sudden, everybody is starting to think about manufacturing. And sales reps are really bad at this because they drag marketing resources in after them. Like, oh, please build me an asset for X, Y, and Z. And before we know it, we've got 10% of our pipeline in manufacturing. And let's really hope that the product actually works in that environment, because we're not above the funnel as sales reps. We're not really thinking that through. And so as leadership, when things start growing, they start widening. I think it's very counterintuitive, but good managers constrain that until they're confident that all the way down the funnel, post funnel, product wise, this is a good fit, right? This is not a waste of time. And I think we're, if you don't constrain that, or at least really, really give some thought to where is your growth coming from? You can get pretty spread out, and your ICP generalizes, and then you end up with a lot of different, battles on 14 fronts, and marketing can't keep up, ops can't keep up. You start stressing the system because the entire system hasn't been built for, 17 verticals that you're now in. So, and it's a good problem to have because you're experiencing growth, but it has to be managed.
100%. I've experienced this way too many times. And it's just, even mature companies, I'm talking like 30, 40, $50 million in recurring revenue to start. Oh, you closed a couple of deals with that. Let's go and see and shake the tree and see what will fall out. Like, no, it was just happenstance. We just closed them. Doesn't really mean that there is a vertical there that we need to chase.
Yeah, exactly.
You've seen slow growth, hypergrowth, and flat markets. What pattern repeats in almost every company right before growth stalls?
Let's see. I think it's message drift. I think what happens, the stall, if you think of it, the stall occurs above the funnel. It shows up at the bottom. Yeah. It starts to be visible down below more often than not. And it's disguised because you're growing. So think of the top of the funnel as widening. The top of your funnel is growing. At the same exact time, you're stalling, and it's being disguised by this expansion of the top of the funnel. You don't know that until you see the results coming through the bottom. And where I see that mostly is you have lost your alignment to your ICP. Now, maybe you've diluted it because you've gotten 14 different verticals running simultaneously, or think of your ICP and your company's mission and your value proposition as two moving objects, and they're either tracking together or they're diverging.
Yeah.
And things in the market can make you diverge, right? New competitors, governance changes, anything like that can affect this. And so what is always top of mind for me is your ICP tracking, is it aligned to the market you're chasing? Like, this is what I say my ICP is. Where is your market? And is it tracing? Is it aligned to that? Because I think you get all kinds of divergence occurring. And that's what happens when you get a lot of growth and you get sampling in different verticals and segments, and you just get it spread out and your message starts to generalize. That's the challenge, because if you look at a company's message for 5 verticals, marketing kind of gets stuck because they got to produce stuff that generally applies.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're not just for plumbers anymore. You're for electricians, and you're for framers, and you're for, whatever the different services you're providing. And I think it's the divergence of the drift of the message and the drift of the ICP to where your market is.
Yeah. 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 100%. One of the good fortunes of working with a lot of different companies, a lot of different sales leaders, is that you get to see a lot. You observe a lot. You get to absorb a lot of the information, different ways to do different things. When you walk into a company as CRO, CSO, what are the first three things you audit before touching the team at all?
Yeah. I say one of the first things I look at is, as I was just saying, ICP clarity versus the customer base you just started acquiring. Like, not your entire customer base, but everybody in the funnel, everybody who's gone through the funnel recently, just trying to get a sense of, are what you're chasing what you're getting,
Yeah.
right? Because I always kind of want to start above the funnel. Then I look at the qualification process, which is, okay, how are you assessing whether this is your ICP or not? And honestly, sales reps are not good at that a lot of times, because if somebody is positive, we'll just blow past whether you're qualified or not. Like, incentives are aligned for me to get these guys to close. So if they're not a great fit, I'm the last person who's probably going to say these guys aren't a great fit.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, and you know this as a sales leader, which is, when it's not a great fit, the worst thing that can happen is you find out late. You find out way down in the sales cycle. And it happens, it's really bad with the bigger the deals are, because the farther they go, the more complex sale it is, the more people are involved. Then you get to the end, then you realize before they close, it's just not the right fit.
Yeah. Crap.
And so it's really costly. So that's the other one. And then the third part is usually how a company's making decisions. How do they govern this process? How does targeting work? Who's deciding that? Who's judging whether things are qualified? It's just like, what is the judgment? How are decisions made? Who's monitoring that? Because I want to understand, like, there's what's written and there's what's done.
Yeah.
And I'm working with the client right now, which is, there's a whole bunch of initiatives, like, we want to go do this, but the behavior is different. They're different. And so I kind of want to see, this is what we say we're going to do. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's no shame there, because everybody is kind of got a gap there, but how wide is that gap?
Such excellent stuff. 100%. It's always hard for me to pivot into another topic, but I want to squeeze as much as I can out of it.
Sure.
But one thing I would say I've spent quite a lot of time, and I do spend quite a lot of time, is talking and thinking about culture. For me, I would like to be the leader. I think every leader wants to be not just praised, but at the same time respected. People that respect the person, kind of like I was giving this analogy the other day to the person, kind of leader that you could go into battle with, for proverbial battle. Like, I can stand by that leader. And I've been watching recently, in the past, this hustle culture. I think for whatever reason, salespeople are treated as disposable. They're treated very harshly at times, because it's a pressure cooker environment. You've managed teams. You have presided over, boards of companies where you have seen sales teams grow, shrink. Do you feel like that there is a right way to manage salespeople, or you feel like that every leader is different? And of course, the third part is, and this something came out of a YouTube of a very well-known company, and the sales leader there was like, they were talking about how they would shame salespeople over their pipeline in public. And for me, maybe it's just dissonance in the fact that I don't understand what that's trying to achieve. But at the same time, if you're a very popular company, people want to work for you, but that strategy surely cannot be very scalable. And it's not a way to govern. It's not a way to manage people, period, because word gets around. I'm just confused as to why this is the way it is. And is that the right way? Are we on the right path? Should it really be so dog eat dog environment?
Yeah. Um, Culture is a really critical element. Uh, one of the companies that I joined, um, we had a very vibrant, healthy culture. It wasn't perfect, but it was very, very healthy. And by healthy, I mean a lot of mutual respect. There was a lot of pressure. I was in the sales, leadership part of the organization, and we were growing, and there was always pressure, but there was a lot of respect both directions. And um, I don't think I think publicly shaming someone is kind of a ridiculous way to get something done, honestly. I think what that gets you is compliance. It doesn't get you trust. It doesn't get you max effort. I think what you want out of your salespeople is to feel empowered to take matters into their own hands, meaning that they're gonna give as much effort as they think they can to the effort, and failure is not a bad part. Like, think about win rates. Win rates at 33, 35%. That's pretty damn good. You're losing 67% of the time. Um, which means there's tons of mistakes. There's tons of losses. Loss is part of it. And I think the best cultures were the ones that balanced. We have a critical role. We're primary resources to keeping this company, getting revenue. So it is a critical role. There is a lot of pressure on us. We have to do our best. We have to find a way to our goal. But I think the cultures that were great were the ones that it's like, it is we, right? Anytime that managers separate themselves from their team, um, and if you're not in the same boat, then there is going to be a dissonance there with reps, and you're not going to get your max effort from people, whether they're an A player, a B player, a C player. You're not going to get the best from them, and you're also not going to get the truth. Right? The one thing as sales readers need the most is what is really going on. Like, what is really going on, and you can boil that down to pipeline. Like, everybody experiences like layers of crap you got to peel off of a forecast to get to the truth. And if you have a culture that's solid, then you know there's a few layers in there, and it might be ignorance, it might be optimism, wishful thinking. You got to peel a couple of those off. But when you don't have trust, then you have a whole bunch of other layers. Like, I'm protecting myself. Like, I was with an acquisition that got pulled into IBM, and we had this, after getting in there for a year. This is a million years ago, but we had our pipeline and we had our shadow pipe, and the shadow pipe was the real pipe, and the pipeline was what everybody saw. And so we saw the exact same behavior, which is everything's great, everything's great. Then as right at the end of the period, month or quarter, everything would like cave in at the very end. And what that taught me was, you're not getting the truth. So you can't correct for it. And if you can explain and help your reps understand that this is about correcting for this. This isn't about beating you harder. It's about, what do we need to do, knowing what position we actually are in. How much of a course correction do we need to make? And, as a sales leader, talking to the board or talking to senior leaders, you need to know pretty close to exactly where you stand. That's important. Whether it's good or bad is actually less important than whether it's reality. If it's reality, good or bad, then you can make decisions about it. And that's how all management works: is, what are we going to do now? Is it a shortfall? Are we over? Are we under? Where are we struggling, so we can focus resources on the part that needs the help.
So there's two interesting points you made there, and I want to get to one of them, which is acquisition, in just a minute. The other one you talked about, of course, culture. I feel like people are smart, very adaptable, especially salespeople, very amenable, and they when you treat them in a certain way or a certain culture you build out, they will just go ahead and make sure they maximize for that certain behavior. So like you said, if you're shaming somebody, they're just going to go ahead and maximize for compliance and make sure that
Yeah.
that metric looks good. And so they don't get the crap, so to speak, for a lack of a better way to put it. So I think that is just a very short way to burn out people. And at the same time, not maximize their values. But I want to talk about acquisitions. You said you've been through acquisition process multiple times. Is there something that actually happens to culture after acquisitions that nobody prepares for? Do you feel like that it's on a company level or leadership level that a lot of folks, since they're like, they got their exit out, they don't really focus on it? Does it change at all? At least I've been through multiple times and I kind of feel like that there is somewhat of a change that happens in the culture in the way, if you're bootstrapped, the fear of you're growing and that's okay. If you grow 10% a year, maybe now it's 7%, but now that you're going through acquisition, probably there's somebody you got a board, it's more mature, it's more serious, got targets, and things start to become a little bit more fast-paced, a little bit more serious. And there is a shift that happens slowly, but it sure as hell happens.
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely is a shift. So in the few that I've been involved in personally, I can only speak from those anecdotes, but think of the relative size difference. The one characteristic that I think I did not understand going through that, certainly at the very beginning of my career when it happened a couple times, versus later in my career when I kind of understood what was probably going to happen, is a large company, large relative to whatever the little company is, let's say, so it's all relative, but a large company behaves different. And I went through this a couple times. One was we were left to our own devices. We were kind of a wholly owned subsidiary. We could do whatever we wanted. That actually felt good, but that didn't turn out well. It actually made us feel good. Like, hey, we're maintaining our culture and all this kind of stuff, which it actually did feel good, but it was really not the right way to do it. Another acquisition, it went the exact opposite way, which is this is exactly the way you're going to now behave. And so it kind of ripped off the Band-Aid of you are no longer the former company. You are this company, and this is how we do things.
Yeah.
It was more abrupt. It kind of stung because we were so proud of who we were.
Yeah.
But in reality, it was much better for the employees that were getting acquired, me included, was you knew where you stood. You knew it was almost like you just got a new job. You just got a new job.
Right.
The reporting structure is different. The way we talk to each other, the expectations we have. It was very, it was pretty fast, but it was very clear. And the acquiring company did a great job of making it clear. And if you didn't like that, you didn't have to stay. But you had to become the employee of the new company. And I came to appreciate that, even as abrupt as it was. I came to appreciate that because what you want to be presented as an employee is, what do you expect of me? Where do I fit? And how can I add value?
There you go.
And if that's fuzzy because you want to make me feel good, that's problematic, because then you're saying you can make your own decisions, but guess what? You can't do that. By the way, you can't do that. It's like, I'm getting mixed signals, which is, am I my own thing, or am I inside your company? I think stretching that out is just, it's unfair. It's less effective. Let's call it
100%.
It's not unfair. It's just less effective.
100%.
And so those are the things, like, as employees, we want things to continue, right? We built something, we're very proud of it, and to have it go away, it's hard. It's hard to, something you poured yourself into, to have it go away. But that's kind of what has to happen.
Yeah.
If you're going to increase the odds, it's going to work.
100%. Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you something. How do you know it's a rep's fault versus the system's fault?
Yeah, I always blame the system first. And that is partly because a lot of times it's kind of how we're set up to support the
Yeah.
people that we're asking to do the job. But even if it's not the system, I want that rep to know I'm not pointing my finger at you first without
Mm.
knowing, right? And so if it's not the system, let's it could be the system or it could be the rep. Let's start with the system. How is this set up? What are you being told to do? How is this supported?
Mm.
What's the, what was the instruction really? And why did you make the decision you made?
Mm.
I want to understand that first
Yeah.
before we go and do, let me help you. Let me teach you a lesson, or let me admonish you for making that mistake, or anything I'm
Yeah.
going to do at that point. But I really do think if we're in the same boat, chances are the system had something to do with you, not getting the right message,
Yeah.
not doing the right thing. I'll give you an example. Incentive plans, right? Complex incentive plans are a really easy
Yeah.
way to misdirect people.
Yeah.
Like, and when you have a big company and you have a complex organization, you need a complex incentive plan, and they get really unwieldy. And all of a sudden you got rep behavior that doesn't align with the company's goals,
Yes. Yes.
as an example. And so, and sometimes the system has to stay in place. And so
Mm.
you need to help coach the rep, which is we gotta, we have to counteract this a little bit. So it's still through coaching and whatnot, but I, 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 I think it was very easy in the beginning of my career to think that the rep was at fault, when
Yeah.
probably my fault as the leader. Something was not exactly right.
Yeah.
And, together we had to figure it out.
Yeah. What's the fastest way to lose credibility with the board as a revenue leader? Interestingly enough, I wrote that question down because the first time I met you was actually in a board meeting.
Oh,
and and I have thought about that a lot, which is you come in, how do you establish credibility? Of course, you have a little bit because the CEO is saying that, hey, this is a person, this is my point guy for revenue. But how do you lose credibility in front of a board as a revenue leader?
yeah. I do remember that. I do remember that call. Um, so I think there's two aspects to this that are important. One is understanding understanding the board. And what I mean by that is it's very easy to forget that the board is not in your business. They are almost never in your business except
Yeah.
once every 90 days. So
Yeah.
they got a million things going on as board members. A very little bit of their mind space is on your business. And so one of the ways that kind of leads to trouble is too much information, right? And the reason is because all these board members, lots of these board members used to be operators. And so they think they understand how your business runs. I'm speaking of myself. I'm on a board. It's very easy to think that
Mm.
I understand someone's business. And so when a board member is presented with a lot of information, there's just a crap ton of places to jump that
Mm.
you don't want that conversation to go, because it's not germane. It's not going to help you. Um, and a board member who sees too much information is going to interpret that as, where's the focus?
There you go.
And so I'd say the number one thing is, here's where I'm focused on these three things. These are the top three things that I'm focused on, and why. And if they're wrong, that's fine. Like if somebody disagrees with that, then that's a good topic, which is, what about this? How are you thinking about this? And I thought about that, but I still don't think it's as important as this. And if somebody wants to change my mind and help me see and learn from their experience, great.
Mm.
Then I'll consider refocusing. But what boards don't want to see is a lack of focus, because lack of focus kills companies. Everybody goes in so many different directions. And as a result, you're not going to make progress. And
Mm.
so it's not about being wrong or tuning someone's plan. It's about not showing the board that you understand your business. As a revenue leader, it's like, here's where we stand. You got to know that. You just got to be on top of that. Uh, here's where we need to go. Here's how we're going to get there.
Yeah. Focus. You can,
Yeah.
And this is perfect advice. One last question, just before we head into our rapid fire round. Any idea what sales will look like in 2030 that would shock today's CROs?
I think we're going to be stunned by the smallness of teams. I think that's, the complexity of a go-to-market team, let's say right now, generally it's pretty complex. You got ops, you have a bunch of marketing ops, sales ops, you got sales reps, you got SDRs, you got a lot of roles, a lot of function, let's call them, and they're usually doled out into, hey, these people need to do this function and these people do this function. I think that will start to merge more together. I think it will be smaller teams, multiple functions per person, because they'll be able to cover more ground individually. I think that would be the first thing. And I think the other thing will be, I always argued early on that it was hard for a first line sales leader to manage more than whatever the number was, 6, 8 people. And it depended on the complexity of the deals, of course, in the space. But I thought there was a top end of that. I wonder if that number can go higher. So I think fewer management layers, maybe not reporting breadth, how many reps you're going to manage, but how many layers are there between the CRO and the first line manager?
Yeah.
Because think about what those layers do. They consolidate, right? It's like, these guys report to these people and these people report to these people and that reports to the top person. I wonder how much of those roles is about consolidation and synthesis. Now, there's a lot of judgment in each of those layers, but there's also a lot of just management of the information and, interpretation and following information flowing up and information flowing down. And a lot can get lost in 4 layers of management. And that's kind of a big company thing, but I think more people can cover more ground if they're effective with their automation.
Yeah, 100%. All right, this is fantastic. I want to dig into the rapid fire round. Just as quick questions, quick answers. Best advice you've ever received, business or personal?
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. That was given to me by a wilderness first responder training class, which is don't make things worse by going too fast.
This is perfect. Advice on the flip side, advice you ignored or wish you had listened to?
I think early on it was be more empathetic, which is really bad because I was not very empathetic at the beginning of my career. And I feel like I learned the hard way.
Yes.
And I learned that empathy and really trying to understand people as people made a huge difference in having a good culture.
And it's something I feel like that I had to learn that the hard way too. And that with power, of course, comes responsibility. And at the same time, you're managing just people who have emotions, responsibilities, similar to how you are. And I think you can catch more, flies with honey than you can with vinegar.
I think you can.
Yeah. So it's the right way to go. We could use a little bit more of the empathy of the word right now.
We sure could.
What would you tell your younger self, say 10 to 15 years ago?
I would definitely say, this is going to sound very counterintuitive talking about sales leadership, but it's like
don't go into sales.
The results really don't matter. I'd come home at the end of every quarter and I'd tell my wife, I'd say, oh man, we're going to miss, or we're going to do this. And after about 60 quarters, she's like, really? Just, you can't even remember the last quarters. And it was true. It was more about, I wish I would have focused more about the process and the fun that we were having. I did recognize how much fun, but I should have maximized that And the results, I know everybody says it, it's really hard to understand at the beginning of your career, but it's like they matter less than you think.
Yeah. You got to enjoy the journey, right? Touch grass. 100%. One ongoing challenge in your current work that keeps you up at night.
I do feel like I don't want to be behind in AI.
Mm.
Does feel like a layer being, you know, plastered on the top of the technical stack, and it's very easy to get buried down inside of that and not stay up. Not like I need to stay up with everything, but to understand how it's going to be applied, because I do think it will be applied, incredibly broadly, and it'll touch everyone. So I'm just trying to be open-minded and really try to be educated about how to do all that. So I'm experimenting with all kinds of tools and building agents and trying to do all that stuff. So I'm not very good at it, but I'm definitely spending time on that.
Yeah. Favorite restaurant, meal, or spot in the US?
I just had a great Mediterranean meal at a restaurant called Huda, Huda, in Brooklyn.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, fantastic place. That was, off the top of my head, fantastic place.
There's just so many food restaurants in New York. It's just tough to go visit them all. But I'm gonna be stateside in a couple of weeks, so I'll give it a try.
Yeah. The app Belly, Beli. Have you heard of that?
No, I'm not. What is that?
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta look at it. It's a restaurant rating app,
Oh,
but
right on.
it kind of it's influenced by your peers, the friend group that you have in there, and it makes you rank restaurants against each other. It's really my son turned me onto it. It's pretty cool. You should check it out.
Very meta. I'll give it a try. Thank you. One tool that you swear by, I cannot live without.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm trying to be organized, so Notion is helping me.
It's a cult. Yeah.
Yeah. So I try to use Notion. I do use chat quite a bit.
Yeah.
I appreciate its ability to pull, to summarize things. I know its limitations. I understand its limitations, but it's very helpful. I get a lot of things going, and I kind of head in 12 directions, and so it helps bring me back to focus. So that's been quite useful.
The ability to distill it down, it's perfect. Well, Justin, this has been great. Earlier at the beginning of our call, or just before that, actually, I just found out that there's a tool, sort of like an LLM, so to speak, that essentially plugs into all of your knowledge that you have, emails, notes, or articles or blog posts that you write or videos you create. And essentially the premise, it works sort of like a black box LLM in and of itself. And you can ask it questions, and it would be questions that would be answered by Justin, for instance, based on his experience and knowledge. After going through it all in about, a full page worth of notes, I think that you should go and opt for that, because I have so many questions that I kind of feel like sometimes that, I think about it. I'm like, it'd be a good idea to ask Justin what he thinks of it, because you just don't know what you don't know. And one of the I say advantages of experience is that you have lived through it, you've been through it. So even though chat can tell you something, or you can Google it, there's something different about actually listening for a person who can add a little bit more context and flair and color to it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think my wife is in the health and longevity space, and she's got a couple of very well-known kind of science-minded scientists, basically, and they've created abilities to kind of ask questions of their corpus of information.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea. I think people who have produced a lot, have written a lot, it probably is useful to say. That's the one thing I have about LLMs, which is, where are the bounds of this thing? Where is this going? And some of the power is it goes everywhere, but some of the negative attributes are that it goes everywhere. And so it's kind of like, that's why I like I like Notebook inside of Google because you can kind of say, hey, only look at this stuff. I like bounding the data in some circumstances. I think we'll get to the point where you can kind of turn that on and off and manage that layer would be really useful to say. And maybe you can. It's probably my ignorance. You might be able to do that already, but I think that will be very useful for trying to figure out answers to all the questions that we have.
So, Justin, it's been fantastic. Where can listeners find you?
You can find me at justin@j3consult.com. That's my work email, and anybody who's got questions or wants to chat, hit me there. And glad to catch up. It's great to talk to you, Syed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say one thing to the audience of folks who are listening. Anybody who needs help on go-to-market sales, I know at least one person that I would like to have in my Cora. That's Justin. So do check it out, the website and everything. And of course, all the details will be available in the description. Justin, any upcoming projects, launch, talk, or event that you're excited about?
Let's see. Nothing too exciting. I'm trying to create to the topic of AI. I'm trying to create an assistant. So I'm experimenting with creating an assistant just as an exercise more than anything else. So we'll see how that goes. And then on the personal front, my son's getting married in August, so I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, which is wonderful. Family's always more important than work.
100%
in my mind. So we're really looking forward to that. So yeah, nothing too big. I'm waiting for the weather to clear out here in the Midwest of the United States, and looking forward to getting outside.
Oh, Justin, it's been a real pleasure as always. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
Folks, if you got value out of this, share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you next week. Thank you. Thanks.